Welcome to another episode of the Whole Health of Rob Carney podcast. And on this episode, we got Don DeLillo, aka Donny Greens, and just a little bit of a backstory. I think it was maybe 6, 8 months ago. I was house sitting for a good friend, and I was sitting in their basement. They got this nice smart TV. I don't have a TV at my house, so to me, it was like, wow, I get to watch them on TV, and I went to YouTube, and I was like, now, how can I make some money in the gardening industry, making money farming? Because I grow, a lot of my own food. And I was like going down this rabbit hole, and I come across this dude, Donny Greens. He's talking about microgreens. And I was like, oh man, like I've had some microgreens. I know a little bit of microgreens, but I just went down this rabbit hole, just started binge watching all his stuff. I was like, man, this guy's a cool dude. And then not too many weeks ago, we started chatting on Instagram. And here he is. So Donny Greens, a micro farmer, Don DeLillo. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. Such a funny story. It's amazing what the internet can do, how it connects people. It's so great.
It really is. And, it's cool too, because, you definitely opened my eyes to, kind of plant the seed for me that, my grand vision is to have my own homestead, be growing much of my own food. And I was trying to figure, like, what are the steps to get there? And, I was looking into farming loans. They're saying, you need all this experience to get a loan. And, I studied sustainable food and farming in my undergrad, so account for part of that experience. But I was like, man, I got to figure something else out and show some revenue coming in to get a business loan for farming. So I was like, why not start with some microgreens? So it's been a great first step to, get me moving towards that, that potential farming loan.
Amazing, dude. I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, so I want to kind of dive first, just kind of break the ice with, what are microgreens? Because that's a question I get asked. I'm talking about, oh yeah, I'm growing microgreens, good for putting on dishes. I just eat the pea shoots as a snack a lot of times. But like, what are microgreens, and why would somebody want to use them or grow them?
Yeah, so microgreens, it's pretty simple. It's really about the stage of life that the plant is in. So obviously when a plant is starting out, it starts in a seed, and the seed has all that basically perfect nutrition for the plant to start off its life. We as mammals, we have our mother's milk, plants have seeds. So the seed germinates, and then it starts growing its little tail, which is its root, and it turns into a sprout. This is about the sprouting phase. So that's day like 3 to 5, it's considered a sprout. Then if you have it planted in a growing medium, the root goes down into the growing medium, and the shoot comes up, it gets light, and those inside the seed, the seed actually splits off into two, and those become the cotyledon leaves. The seed actually becomes the first two leaves. It splits in half. And those leaves look different than the true leaves, which is the next set of leaves that comes in. And then the leaves are going to look like that moving forward. And those are traditionally what the plant looks like. But the first two leaves look a little bit different. And technically what defines a microgreen is when those first set of true leaves start poking through the middle of the cotyledon leaves is what defines a microgreen. So it's essentially just a very young plant in its earliest stages of growth. And because it's so young and has all that energy from the seed, all the nutrients, the vitamins, the enzymes, it's all concentrated within this food.
So basically, just kind of recapping, because you use some good terms that people may not be familiar with. My explanation for some people is just, it's basically the infant stage of a plant. Would you say it's pretty accurate?
So yeah, I would say that's pretty close. Often I would say like the sprout is like the infant or the toddler.
Okay.
And then the microgreen might be like the teenager.
All right, I like that.
And then it gets into like baby leaf lettuce and then adult plant.
Cool. I dig it. So why would somebody use microgreens? What is the benefit of, for me, I know they have a short life cycle, they have a lot of nutrition in there, but what are kind of the pros, maybe some cons of microgreen growing?
Well, from a health perspective, I mean, you're able to, for the person who doesn't really eat that much vegetables, but they want to be healthy and get some nutrients into their body, they can eat these foods and eat less of the food and still get ample like nutrition to their body. So for instance, like broccoli microgreens are the most nutrient dense out of all of them, and they can get up to 40 times the nutrient density of the adult broccoli plant. So you can essentially eat less and get more. And then for the people who are actually just like very health conscious, they're into it, they've been into it for years. Maybe they're really into living foods and eating like raw vegan lifestyle. these people now have an opportunity to get tons and tons of nutrition into their body by eating a lot of this stuff. And then when you go ahead and you juice it, taking it one step further, you can really just flood your body and all your cells with concentrated nutrition. It's amazing.
So why would somebody then, if there's so much nutrition in the microgreen form, why would people grow it to the full plant? Is you think it's because there's more calories in the full plant? What is your perspective on that?
I guess that's a good question. I mean, in the full plant, there's definitely going to be a lot more plant fiber. So if you really want to get more fiber in it, a lot of fiber, you're probably going to be going for the adult vegetables too. But I mean, in my opinion, and I'm sure you would agree as a holistic health practitioner, is that it's good to have a variety of different inputs, as much variety as you can get, and just having it in quantity.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a stat out there that the average American eats like 14 foods a year, which is absolutely freaking bonkers when you think about it. And a lot of it's like white bread, like McDonald's beef, like the crappiest, meat out there. So when you really look at it, like you said, we really need to diversify. I think this is a great way to have that, diversity in our diet. And, whether we're eating the full plant, we're eating the microgreens plant. But one thing you mentioned there was broccoli microgreens. And this is something I want to dive into because usually I hear broccoli sprouts. So what is the difference between microgreens and sprouts?
Yep. So again, it goes back to like the life cycle of a plant. So when it goes from seed and then it goes to germ, so germinated seed, but a germinated seed might not look like anything other than a seed. It might not have any roots yet. So that's like a germ, like a germinated seed. Then once it starts getting that tail, that root, and it's like a 1/4 inch long, then it's officially a sprout and you can eat it right then. So with a sprout, you're actually eating the seed, the root, and the plant. Whereas a microgreen, you're actually harvesting above the growing medium and you're eating just the plant. So from like a waste perspective, I would say that sprouts are actually even better from a waste perspective because you don't have the waste of the seed and the roots and the growing medium. What else? The sprouts are younger than the microgreen. The microgreens take typically between 6 to 12 days for most varieties, whereas sprouts will take 2 to 5 days depending on varieties. And actually quinoa, you can get to sprout in 1 day.
Wow, cool.
Sprouts grow, they don't need light. So you can grow them actually in the darkness. And I recommend people who have pets who go up on their counters, you can actually take your sprouting device and put it inside your cabinet because they don't need light. The microgreens, they typically do need light. Some microgreen varieties like popcorn shoots, you want them to stay yellow and not develop their chlorophyll. Otherwise they get bitter and they won't be sweet. So that you would keep out of light. But in general, the microgreens need light. And then the growing medium. So microgreens typically grow in a growing medium, whether it's a mesh screen or a grow mat that's made out of hemp or jute or bamboo, or whether you're using like a soil or a potting mix, which is what I use. I use a potting mix. The sprouts don't need anything like that. They actually just grow together in something like a mason jar or a sprout bag or a sprouter. And then the last thing is that I thought I had one more difference. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember it. So we might have to move forward.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I actually just did my first experiment with broccoli sprouts, which they got a little smelly. So I think that I may have oversaturated the seeds and left them in the water a little too long, left them overnight. So do you think that might be the culprit there, is over soaking them?
So if you over soak your seeds, that can happen where they start to ferment. And then instead of the seeds actually sprouting and having vigor, they're kind of just going to be like dead and kind of like, this is probably a bad example, but I equate like over soaked seeds to like a baby in utero with a parent who may have been like doing drugs or drinking alcohol or something like that. Not the greatest example, but that's like the way I think about it in my head. It's just like oversaturation.
Right, just too much.
A little too much. But if you soak them overnight, they should be fine. And sometimes the broccoli sprouts and microgreens will have a little bit of an odor to them. They're a cruciferous vegetable and they tend to sometimes have like a sulfurous smell. So it might not, they might not be bad or anything like that. I would try to keep growing them and see what happens. If they don't sprout and they're looking kind of like weird and bad, then you know something went wrong. But if they're still growing perfectly healthily, then you're good to go.
Yeah, it's been about 5 days and they're barely growing. So I think I destroyed this batch. So it might be
It
time
might
for
be
the next
tough.
one.
Yeah, probably overwatering.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve. I think that's one thing I love about just gardening and growing in general is there's so many different ways to experiment. Like I've been trying some different soil blends, been trying different amounts of watering, different amounts of light. And it's just really interesting to note, which soil blends. Like I put them in the same container, same amount of soil, but different blends, same amount of water, same amount of light, and one's growing twice as fast as the other. And just it really is crazy when you really start to play around with that. And what would you say, just kind of as a base parameter, somebody wants to grow microgreens, like how many hours a day of light, how much are you watering them, what kind of soil are you using, just as the basics there. And obviously everyone's a little bit different, but if you have a blanket statement.
Yeah, everybody's a little bit different. I would say if you can find a high quality potting mix, that's definitely your best bet. The greens typically, grow better in soil. They're going to be get like rooting faster. It feels more natural for them. So just a high quality potting mix that's typically well draining, has some perlite in it. If you can get organic, that's always best. High quality seeds help. So True Leaf Market is a great source. And if you guys want to see like any of the equipment, the supplies that I'm using, I always put links in the descriptions of my YouTube videos. Um, then aside from that, watering is the most important part for microgreens. If people tend to overwater their crops in general, no matter what crop it is, whether it's succulents or whatever it is, people tend to overwater and over take care of it. They forget that nature kind of was doing its thing before we got here. So I would say go easy on the watering. You can actually let the soil or the growing medium dry out before you go and water again. And if you underwater, the plants are going to kind of get weak and fall over. It doesn't mean that they're completely like dead or anything like that. If you water them at that point, they typically perk right back up. And actually, I have a few trays in my farm right now that I'm doing just that too. So try not to overwater and use a high quality seeds and growing medium is my best recommendation. And then growing indoors, I think is easiest. You get to control the climate a little better. And people typically keep their homes around 70 degrees, which is perfect for microgreens. But you can grow them outside with natural sunlight, and people do that. But you have pests and animals that can get into it. So I think growing inside is the best way to do it. You can grow them in a windowsill, or you can buy yourself just a high quality grow light.
And how many hours a day you're exposing these to light?
So I'm pretty sure my lights are on for about 15 or 16 hours in my
Oh,
farm.
wow. Okay, cool.
Yep, they don't have to be, and you could experiment with that too. And that's one of the joys of growing food and getting into it is experimenting with all different things because everybody's grow environment is going to be different. And this is what I consult a lot of my students on. They ask me like, "Oh, what's your seed density?" or like, "What do you do here?" And I tell them what I do, but oftentimes it'll be slightly different for them because they're in a different location, different environment, different farm. So those factors are definitely something to consider.
For sure. And I know a big thing, like you said, with overwatering, that can lead to mold growth. So what do you do in terms of, any sort of mold prevention?
So I actually have a video on that. It talks
You
about a
do?
few
Okay,
things
cool.
you can do. Um, so first step would be try to not overwater because that'll help you to not
Step
get
one.
mold.
Yep.
But in general, I talk about the climate and the different factors that are involved with climate. So the first one is temperature. If you get too hot, like once you start getting towards like 76, 77, you're in the risky zone. And especially if you're growing wheatgrass, if that gets over
Mm,
like 75, chances are you're going to get mold.
mm.
Then if you go too low, you can also get mold, but that's typically not what happens. Then the overwatering, obviously, then the airflow. And airflow is really cool because this is like your saving grace. Um, uh, where like even if it gets a little bit too hot in your farm, if you crank the fans and just keep the air moving really well, it'll prevent the mold from coming because it's actually keeping the mold spores blowing through the farm rather than where they can land on something, settle, and then colonize, which is where you start to see the mold because mold spores are actually in the air around us at all
Right.
time. We're breathing them in. So it's about creating an environment where they can't really proliferate. So, and then the last thing is humidity. So if you can keep your humidity down below like preferably below 60 is ideal. So it's really what I teach my students. Again, it's about having it in like a comfortable zone. There's like a comfortable zone that you want to keep the plants in. If you start going a little bit outside of the zone, you're getting into like the risk factor, but it doesn't mean that it'll definitely happen.
Cool. So it's not like roughly temperature 60 to 70 degrees is kind of a safe zone, right?
Yeah. And the plants will grow differently based on the temperature too. Like even like 4 degrees in temperature will change the growth cycle by one day typically.
Wow. Okay.
So I would try to keep the temperature above like 65, 66.
Okay, cool. Yeah, 'cause it's definitely funny because right now I'm not changing the temperature, but we've had some cooler days out here, and I definitely have noticed, some I planted in different days. Again, just experimenting and noticing some are growing slower, some are growing faster. So yeah, definitely have noticed in my experience that it does make a big difference, even a few degrees.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
well, cool. So I want to dive a little bit into, what got you into the world of microgreens and just entrepreneurship in general. Because I think that the story of people of where they were to where they are now always fascinates me. So, where did the entrepreneurial bug bite you? Where did the microgreens bug bite you? And how did it all come to fruition?
All right. So I think this goes back deeper than I give it credit. I think the entrepreneurial bug hit me from my grandfather. He was kind of like this legend in my family. He was an entrepreneur and he made a lot of money for my family where my grandma didn't really have to work and she kind of just like hangs out with her friends and like goes to lunch and stuff. It's cool. Um, and So he actually passed away when I was 3. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him that much, but I was named after him. So I
Hmm,
feel like I carry some of his legacy in me.
cool.
So I think that originated from him. And then my grandparents, that was my mom's side. On my dad's side, my first memories as a kid really was like going through my grandfather's garden and stealing string beans right off the vine and popping them into my mouth. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. So I think that stood out big time too. So those are like the OG things that happened to me. But then years went by. My parents weren't really into health. They didn't have a garden or anything like that. So I was just missing this huge part of my life. I was trying to get my friends to like shovel driveways when I was younger, and they just wanted to like have snowball fights and just goof off and stuff. So it just never really happened for me. But I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Then my sophomore year in college, I was introduced to a farmer named Will Allen. Not in
Yep.
person, one of my professors was talking about him.
Yes.
But yeah, so Will Allen, and his dream was to be he was a basketball player, and his dream was to be able to grow food like on a basketball court. Like I should be able to make a farm right here and support my team with food. And when he retired from sports, he did just that. And I loved studying his methods of farming where it was all organic. And what was most important, I was in a class called energy systems. And all of the systems of his farm worked together. It was very much symbiotic. So, like,
Right.
he had the aquaponics with the fish feeding the plants. He had chickens that were going around cleaning up the weeds and then also fertilizing. So I just really loved how it was all closed loop, really sustainable farming.
Yeah, I want to just jump in, Don, real quick. And then for anybody listening, Will Allen is doing urban farming. So this is like a lot of times in the middle of a city, like an abandoned plot that he's just converted that was just run down. Maybe it was an old parking lot, but we're talking in the middle of a city. So, people are saying, oh, I can't grow food in the city. This guy, just like you said, when I was studying his work, I was like, man, this guy is defying what we have been told is possible in the world of farming. So just wanted to throw that in there because he's a really fantastic dude.
Yeah, he's a legend for sure. I actually got a chance to meet him. I went to
Nice.
some farm nearby. It was called Duke Farms, either in Pennsylvania or Delaware or something. And I got to take a class on mushrooms. I learned how to build a greenhouse.
Nice.
What's that? Oh yeah, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I skipped the microgreens class that they had because I already knew how to grow those. But it was cool. I actually have a picture with him. It was so cool to meet him. He's giant, man. His hand could like just cover my whole face.
I remember his arms like the size of my freaking quads. Like I remember he's just a giant,
Yeah,
strong dude.
exactly. Makes sense that he was in sports and farming.
Right.
It
For
works.
sure.
Um, so yeah, anyways, he was really what sparked this new like passion and wonder for agriculture. I was writing every paper I could get a chance to write on him. I was writing it on him. And then So a few years go by. I guess I was testing out if I actually liked farming. I was working on a farm nearby. I did like the outdoor farming and the hands-on stuff. It was really cool watching the plants grow from like this tall to over my head and picking all the fruits off of them, the tomatoes and everything. Super cool. So I knew I liked it. So yeah, I graduated college, sustainable energy management degree from SUNY ESF, Environmental Science and Forestry, which is on the campus of Syracuse University. And I was working a job that was kind of relevant to my major. I was going into businesses and switching out their old fluorescent lighting for LEDs to try and save them a buck on their electricity bill. Nothing glorious, wasn't really enjoying it. And of course, I had this bug. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and do something in agriculture. So it was really like, it was in the forefront of my mind. And then in the background of my mind, I also was like, fuck the man. Like, I don't want to work a 9 to 5 for somebody else. Like I want to stick it to the man, like, and do it for me and like be self-sufficient and all that stuff. So that was very much in me as well. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this podcast, but
it's open mic. Keep going.
Okay. All right, cool. So really it just became like, all right, I saved up $3,000. I was like, what am I going to grow? I was actively searching the internet for years prior, but never found anything. And then similar to how you found me, I found these videos on YouTube, like, hey, you can start a business growing microgreens.
YouTube's the best.
Like, dude, mind blown. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. Like, and what was cool is that allowed me to actually start a business, because I had seen things like ginseng or like the urban farmer Curtis Stone model, where like you have to go like get a property and grow food outside. But I was just like, I don't have space. Like, I have barely any money. I have no business experience at all. Like, how am I going to do this? But microgreens seemed tangible. I was like, I can do this. So I invested all my money into my business. I started in my parents' basement in like a 10 by 10 space. I had like 3 racks at the time, but it totally worked. Like, I remember in the beginning, I was told to sell to chefs. And so I was trying to go into working with chefs and all that stuff. But at the same time, I had learned about the health benefits. I was learning about Hippocrates Health Institute. I was learning about sprouts and living foods. So sprouts, microgreens, and wheatgrass. And I was like, you know what? Chefs are using this as a garnish on a plate, and like, that's cool and all. And like, they have awesome flavors too. But I'm pretty sure the real value of these crops is in their health benefits. And that's really what business is about. It's about exchanging value. So I was like, all right, screw this. I'm going to revamp the whole model. I'm going to go direct to consumer. And then I realized, like, well, this is going to be pretty tricky to get people who don't even know what microgreens are. And it's hard enough to get people to be healthy and eat healthy. Like, how am I going to pull this off? So I was like, all right, I'm just going to make it as convenient as humanly possible for the consumer. So I started a direct to consumer home delivery model, where I would go to farmers markets to meet people, get the word out about my business, test different things. And then I would recruit them from the farmers markets into a weekly delivery right to their home. And as long as their order was $20 and up, I would give them free delivery, and they would get text messages the night before, text messages in real time when it was delivered. So it just made it completely seamless. They didn't have to worry about payment because the card was on file, automatic. And that's what I did. And then my business really started taking off when I created the Sunny Sampler box, which was like a little bit of everything, all the different microgreens that I was growing, all in one box. It allowed me to have higher profit margins, and was essentially like the Applebee's appetizer sampler of microgreens. Like, it just made sense. Variety of flavors, variety of nutrients, and that just happened to be $20. So I was getting everybody onto this $20 box, delivering it right to their home. And that was it. I remember the money was coming in. It was actually working. I was like, holy crap, I'm doing it. Like, this is working. I created this whole new model for the microgreens industry. Then I was able to move out of my parents' basement about like 9 months in. And I moved into this old rundown deli that I used to ride my skateboard in the parking lot when I was young and buying sodas in there and stuff. Moved in there, fixed it up. And then within a year, I was out of space in that building, and my business was doing over $100,000 in revenue in year 2. So I was like, this is crazy. And then I left there and moved into my current farm, which I've been in since 2019. And I also realized somewhere along the line that I can only grow so much with my own 2 hands, and I'm pretty good at business. So I want to have leave my legacy and have the biggest impact I can possibly have. So in addition to running my microgreens farm, I was also going to educate others in starting and growing their microgreens business and doing it in similar ways that I do, because I've been able to find success with it. So I started my YouTube channel 2020, and it's been working and growing. I have a bunch of students, and we get to share success stories every Monday on my Facebook group. It's amazing. So I couldn't be happier, and it feels really good to be able to do something good for the planet and help people in a big way. And it's just facilitating people to start a business in farming and then help people with their nutrition. It's just like amazing. I can't find anything wrong with it besides maybe the single-use plastic, but I have some plans to combat that as well.
Man, just got me real excited to listen to that whole journey, because I've heard pieces of it just by following your stuff, but hearing the full thing start to finish is that was pretty cool. So thank you for sharing that, man. And a big thing, like you said, is you're solving a lot of issues. A big issue that people have is getting fresh food, because if we're getting food, like we're both on the East Coast, for anybody listening, Don is currently in New York. That may be changing at some point in the future, but if we're getting food shipped from California, like I don't buy chard in the grocery store, because by the time the chard gets to the grocery store, it's already wilting. It's already looking not so great. And so I think one of the great things about, you can look at this as a pro or a con, but microgreens then kind of force you to buy locally, because their shelf life, from my experience, isn't all that long, that it's nice to really be able to support that local market. And so I think, really having the ability to either grow it yourself, or if you're looking at this from a business perspective, like obviously, like I was mentioning, just following Donny Greens on YouTube, like check it out. If you haven't already checked it out, like check it out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's basically like a course, a crash course of anything you could possibly need. You have a question, basically search in the search bar, you're going to find it. But you've done a phenomenal job on that. And I noticed you took a little break from YouTube. I think it's been a couple months since you posted a video on there, and I know you got some other ventures going on. So what does the path forward look like for you?
Yeah, so I had this kick-ass employee. She was working Sunday to Wednesday doing all the harvesting. And then she got a job. I guess she wants to do something with like doctors in a doctor's office. So she got a job that she was looking for a while. And unfortunately, I only have her on Sundays now. So when that happens, like my first priority always, because like there's a list of priorities as an entrepreneur, my number one is like to make sure that Finest Foods stays alive, right? Like that's my baby, got to keep it living. And most importantly, like my customers rely on this food. So I had to kind of take a step back and make sure I was able to run that business now that I lost my star worker. And then also a bunch of changes at home. Like me and my girlfriend moved into this house back in February. She ended up leaving her job 2 months in because she was getting kind of like abused at work. So she resigned, and she's been working with me full time. So I'm paying all of my bills, all of her bills. So there's a lot going on, plus running the business. And I just like needed to make sure like my mental health didn't decline either. So I had to take a little bit of a hiatus from YouTube, but I'm really excited to get back into it. I have a lot of really good content that I'm going to be able to put out on YouTube in the near future. So right now I'm working on finding a partner for my business so I can get away from like the hands-on work. They can run the operations of the farm. I am almost done developing a software for microgreens farmers called FarmStar, which is basically going to streamline the whole business, everything from getting customers to figuring out how much to grow each week, managing your inventory. It's going to be incredible. So that should be done in a few weeks from now. And then, so yeah, it's really just about like supporting the microgreens industry as a whole. Once I can get my focus away from my business, make sure that's running with somebody else, I can really focus on supporting the whole industry and making sure that we can help people as a whole industry, because I think it's one of the best industries. I think it's just in the beginning. So that's really my goal, is to finish up this software, maybe make a course to help people and show people how I've kind of done it. And that's really it. I want to move to San Diego, hopefully in February. My dad has an avocado grove there, and there's an awesome opportunity to live on the grove and learn how to manage the grove. And then also similar plans to you, I want to start homesteading and growing a lot of my own food on my property and be even more self-sufficient, lowering my waste footprint. and also just resilience. The world is crazy right now, and being able to grow my own food on my own property would make me feel very safe and secure. So that's another thing that's going on. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Awesome. I love it, dude. What part of San Diego?
It's in Bonsall, Bonsall, and it's about 40 minutes north of the main like city of San Diego.
Okay. How far is that from like Temecula?
Temecula. Let's pull up a map. Let's see.
We got technology, people.
Yeah.
We're doing it live.
So we're gonna go Temecula, California, directions, and then we're gonna do starting point. I'm gonna put in the Grove address, which is on Rancho Amigos Road in Bonsall, which is like the ranch of friends. I think it's so funny. So Temecula is just 20 minutes north of the Grove.
Cool.
Is that where you're at?
No, but so when I go to the Czech Institute, which is where I do my holistic lifestyle coach training, I'll be going out there. It's right in town next to Temecula. It's called Rainbow, California, and then in Carlsbad is the other, couple places that we go to. So I'm going to be doing my holistic lifestyle coaching level 3, June of 2022. So if you're out there and I'll have a rental car, definitely going to want to see that avocado grove.
Dude, chances are I should be there. So yeah, definitely drive through. We'll do a little tour, probably shoot some content.
Hell yeah.
And if you're living out of your car, you could totally park it there for a few days too.
Yeah, I might get an Airbnb. I think I might upgrade. I'd probably rent a car and get an Airbnb or something while I'm out there. But
cool.
Yeah, that's going to happen now. Cool. So
awesome.
Kind of want to shift gears just away from microgreens a little bit, because we're kind of diving into just Don as a human being. And I think that's something that, we can put you in the box of the microgreens farmer for the rest of your life. But I'm sure there's other interests that you have, other things, that you want to accomplish, want to achieve. Are there any other projects outside of microgreens that you've been working on?
Honestly, not so much. The microgreens industry has got me pretty darn busy between running my business and focusing on helping everybody else as well as much as I can. But other than that, I mean, just in general, I love my cats. We got our one cat, Henrietta, named after a song by Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. They're an awesome jam band if you don't know them. We got her about 2 years ago, so she's great. Now that we're in our own house, like it's fun to watch them run around and go crazy. We got a second cat only 2 months ago. It feels like we've already been with her for years because we love her so much, little Margot. So that's always fun playing with the cats. What else? I love my one wheel. So I've been riding my one wheel a lot.
Really?
Like an electric longboard type thing, but you could take it off road and everything.
Nice.
So that's a lot of fun. You could take it in trails. And that's basically how I commute to my farm. I live on the property that my farm is on, where I rent. So my commute is about a minute and a half on the one wheel. Nice. That's if I'm booking it. If I'm going nice and slow, it's about 3 minutes. So yeah, it's really just one wheel, cats, microgreens business. But I'd say that my favorite plants in general, surprisingly enough, is not microgreens. They're probably my third favorite, but I love bamboo.
Nice.
And I love jade plants.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Any reasoning for either of those?
Well, you know what? Going back to my grandfather on my dad's side, where I was picking the string beans in his garden, I think the first opportunity I had to escape from my parents as a young dude, where I could get out of their reach and where they weren't just having an eye on me, is I would run out the door and run into the bamboo forest that he had on the property.
Nice.
It was just these huge, tall bamboo, and it was darker in this area because it's all shaded, and I could walk through it like a maze. So that did something weird spiritually. It was just so cool to connect with the bamboo like that. And then when I got older, I was able to climb up it and then catapult out of it and bring myself down to the ground. My grandfather made and fixed everything out of bamboo. So it was really cool to see that. He was super handy with it and super useful. So it's cool to see bamboo just used as a primitive tool and it's a resource, right?
Right.
Nowadays I feel we've gotten so far away from going to get a resource from nature and then turn it into something usable. Like kids think that food comes from the grocery store. Like, nah, yo, it comes from the ground. Like it's
Right.
grown in the ground first. Um, so it was cool, I think, as a young dude to be watching him grow this bamboo on his property and then turn it into things. It was pretty wicked. But now, at this point in my life, I see bamboo as being a potential business opportunity to manage groves. It's a really sustainable resource. It helps with like when like water like makes runoff and like it erodes the land. If you plant bamboo there, because of the rhizomes in the ground and the way it spreads, it actually holds the land in place. So we could use it to solve that problem. It actually sanctions more CO2 than trees do. So that's really cool. It's the fastest growing crop on the planet. Maybe actually, yeah, I think it straight up goes faster than sprouts. Like I'm
Oh,
pretty
it
sure
does.
it
It's
grows.
the fastest growing. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like what? So that's really cool and sustainable. And now that we have processes to break it down into its fibers, we can now make paper and all these other products with it. Clothing, like apparently the clothing, you stay cooler, but also stay warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer, however that works. So I think there's a lot of cool opportunities for bamboo. And I think moving into the future, we're going to see a lot of cool things done with it. So that's the bamboo. As far as the jade plants go, like I don't know, my parents have this glass room off the back of their house. They live 5 minutes away where I grew up, and I loved that room. It was my favorite room. It's just like so warm, plants everywhere, and they had these huge like 30-year-old jade plants that came
Hmm.
from California originally. So I remember one day I was in the glass room one like super nice summer day. I think I had a little bit of mushrooms and I was just like relaxing in the room, like enjoying the vibe. And like the universe or something told me to like take cuttings of the jade plants. So all of a sudden, like I'm in my parents' glass room, like I take all the jade plants, I have like clippers and I just like hack them all away. Next thing you know, I have like 100 jade plant cuttings and the plants like look healthier. They were able to get flowers the next season because they were healthier, taking off all that dead weight. And then I was able to propagate all these new plants. And I think one of the fascinating things to me about succulents in general, but specifically these jade plants, is nature's ability to replicate itself, right? You're taking one big plant and making hundreds of new ones. And this is just like, this is kind of what drew me to agriculture for business in the first place too. Like nature knows how to grow, it knows how to do its thing. And then with the succulents and stuff, like it just replicates itself. So it's like printing money or like replicating something without additional resources. Like we're taught to be in such like a scarcity mindset, but then when you just simply observe nature, it's like it's abundance all around us.
Everywhere. Well, it's funny, I have a saying with my friends that we say it's like life wants to live. And
Mm.
that's the thing, we are in the city, you walk in the city of Boston, there's a little tiny crack in the sidewalk. There's a little, weed coming up there, which, I argue that nothing's really weed. It has some sort of use in there, but everywhere you look, there's like a little concrete wall. There's a tiny hole. There's a plant coming out of the concrete wall. Like life is so fascinating to me. And just, when you, like you said, if you go out in nature, you can have all the problems in this electrical grid box that we have created and then we live in, which is great. But when you go out there, everything changes. You're in a whole new environment. Like looking right there, just a wall of trees. That's very different than we're in here. And so now I'm realizing I got to get a glass room, put it with plants and do some mushrooms. That sounds like the best trip, best trip ever. So that's going to be on my list of things to have in my future home.
That's amazing.
But another thing you're saying too, like, just the fact that a lot of kids, don't know where food comes from. And I think that's a scary thing that we've gotten so disconnected that, again, cities are great. There's definitely pros to that, but we also have to recognize there's a lot of drawbacks to that as well. And in the fact of just getting so disconnected from nature. And I remember there was a study done, and again, it's hard to know about studies because like always a sample size, all these type of things. But basically it's saying that the average kid knew more labels of processed foods than whole foods. Like you could look at like Trick cereal, like Cheerios, and they could rattle off those by their logo, by their box design. but they see like a whole banana. They didn't know what it was. And it's like, to me, that's terrifying. Like that's not a good place to be. And, I think that having the homestead for me is having the ability to, raise kids on a farm, like you were saying, going to your grandfather's and being able to pick beans off the vine, like whether that was conscious or not, that planted a seed clearly in your brain of like, oh, this is the real deal. This is where food actually comes from. And I think that that's where I'm, really sharing with people, hey, you can grow your own food, just start with something, is that we don't need this, or not one, but many, middlemen in between. Like I was saying, if you're a farmer in California, loads it up on a truck brings it across the country, gets unloaded, put on the shelves, you go there, you drive it home. Like, how much energy is that wasting, first of all? But second of all, is like, why not just try to grow it yourself? And people are like, oh, I kill the plants. And, like we're saying earlier, just experiment. Like, if you keep putting 2 cups of water and it keeps dying, don't put 2 cups of water. Like, to me, it's just like kind of a little silly that some people say they can't grow plants. Like, you can just, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You got to experiment. You got to try different things. I think that's what microgreens, with their short life cycle, is such a good place for people to try with, because it's not like, growing, a carrot that takes 2 months or 3 months. And it's like, oh, 3 months is up and I didn't grow the carrot. I guess what did I do wrong? I don't know. Wait till next year. But this is all right. Let me try next week. So you do it inside too. So yeah, I think the message that you're putting out is much needed.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's cool. The microgreens are such a quick growth cycle. You get that feedback loop so quickly. You can make a mistake and then fix it. Yeah, it's a week. And sprouts are even quicker too, and even easier to grow. Oh, I think, was that the other thing? I think the other thing that I read before was that sprouts, they just need water.
Nice.
That's it. The microgreens, they need water and something to grow on. So glad I remember that. But yeah, the whole thing with the kids, it's like, there's like marketing, right? So there's things that have been put in place and things that are inevitable, like technology and psychology, that if we as entrepreneurs who care about important things and care about the truth, it's up to us to really take advantage of these things that we have at our disposal and almost like use the same tactics that have been used for bad and use it for good. When you have this bright red box with a Trix bunny on it, like, yo, Trix are for kids. Like, yeah, the kids are going to look at the TV and they're going to want that bunny and the Trix cereal, like when was a banana given the opportunity to market itself to a kid in that way?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not fair. So definitely one of my goals, overarching goals moving into the future with everything I do, just like the vibe, is like just trying to make farming a little bit cooler, like just trying to make farming cool, trying to make farming tangible, not so out of reach, not so like I'm a farmer or I'm not. I truly believe that everybody should be growing at least something. Even if you don't want to grow food, at least grow a plant, a succulent, something.
Right.
You can learn a lot from the plants.
Well, maybe we got to get a clothing line going, make farming cool again. Maybe that'll be our new tagline. That'll be something to get the people going. Instead of red hats, we'll do green hats. Make farming cool again.
Dude, I love it. Let's do that.
But yeah, no, I think like you said, is there's so much, in a capitalistic society, people have every right to, do what they can to, a lot of these marketing departments, like you said, have psychologists on their staff. Like, it's not just like marketing people. They have psychologists who are, what are the primal roots that we can tap into to make people buy from us? And again, they have the right to do that. But if we can recognize like, hey, what they're doing is, maybe a little immoral, maybe it's not the best for our planet, but they have the right to do it. Like you said, cool. Now, how can we flip that script, and instead of being, the victim of this and like, oh man, we have no control. These people are brainwashing us. They're influencing us. Like, all right, cool. Well, one, just turn that off. Stop watching that. Step one. Step two, like you said, what if we use that on the other side of the coin? What if you use that to, quote unquote, brainwash people in a positive light? Because we're getting brainwashed 99% of the time by, you're walking down the city, you're seeing billboards everywhere. And again, if you're consciously or unconsciously, you're still picking that up. So if we can utilize this, like you said, to, use this tool of psychology, use this tool of marketing for good, what is that world going to look like? What if, 78% of commercials in the US are pharmaceutical drugs? What if instead of that, and those are illegal in a lot of places in Europe, by the way, for people listening, marketing pharmaceutical drugs on TV is illegal in many countries, but it's like 78% of the commercials in the US. What if we can utilize these same ideas for the better? And I think that's where social media is such an incredible platform, that we have the ability to make our own show, to have our own TV show, to put our own commercials in there, put whatever we want to put in there. And sometimes people, come and say, oh, you're just trying to sell a course, you're just trying to sell a supplement, you're trying to sell whatever. It's like, this is, like you said earlier, this is a business. This is a exchange of value. Yes, money is not a bad thing. It's just a form of energy. I give you a tool that makes your life better. You give me the energetic exchange of money. That's a fair trade. Just like, we could go back to trading sheep for, paper, or sheep for copper, or whatever we used to do. Like, cool. But now we have this universal thing called money that makes trade a lot easier. So a lot of it, I think, just comes down to mindset. If we can recognize the fact that, hey, we have the choice to either listen to these, big companies marketing things that are garbage for us, or we can tune that out and really choose to focus on listening to people that are, like you said, having our best interest in mind, and really promoting things that are not only just good for them in terms of they get paid from it, but it's also good for you, the consumer, with your health. It's good for the environment with the impact they're doing. I think that's where we make the shift, is from capitalism into conscious capitalism. I think that's where a big shift can be made.
Yeah, and I think that's like literally the answer to saving the world, right? Like we're kind of stuck in the system where like capitalism is just the way it goes. Like GDP is the end all be all, and it's just kind of the way it is. So, it's not like you can change that whole system very quickly like that. You have to figure out a way to work with what you have, but also start shifting the world in the better direction. And yeah, people will say like, oh, you're just trying to sell a course, or you're just trying to do this. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of, but also if you got to have the mindset of, the more money that I make, the more money that Donny Greens makes, the more money that Donny Greens can help, because money is a resource. Yes. I'm not going to take your money and go buy a Ferrari. I'm making money with my microgreens farm. I use that to facilitate the next thing. People pay me money for this. I invest all that money in a software that will then help everybody even more. So yeah, it's about being an entrepreneur and selling something, but selling something good, something that helps mankind. And everybody's spending money. We make money and then we spend money. That's the way it goes. So your money is flowing in some direction. So if you're gladly supporting, Starbucks or Amazon, not to put like companies on the spot, but like if you're gladly supporting these other big corporations, how are you going to go look at some like young entrepreneur who's trying to sell a book on gardening? Like, how are you gonna say anything about that? Like, that's I think people need to have accountability, and they need to be aligning themselves more with the truth, because a lot of people are just very confused. I'm finding like people are just like so confused, and they don't understand what's true, what's not true, where they should be going, what to stay away from, and what they're meant to be here on this earth for.
Right. And a lot of that comes back to conditioning and priorities, because like you said, somebody can say, oh, this person's selling a gardening course for $200 or whatever the price tag is, but then they'll gladly go out, rent a private table at a bar and spend, $500. And it's like, so to me, it's like, that is the biggest waste of money, when I could buy a handle of vodka for $25, $30, $40 if I'm going organic. And then I go to a bar and I pay $10 for a shot. Like, to me, that has always just been a huge disconnect, that I was like, that just doesn't make sense. And, when I was really into the partying, I was just a big pre-gamer. Because I was like, I'm just more efficient. It's like, why would I spend all this money at a bar when I could just do it myself for a tenth of the price or less? So I think it just comes down to priorities and, conditioning. Like we're talking about, these companies are very good at marketing, to have fun, to get beautiful women, you have to drink beer, you have to drink vodka, you do like every commercial is just, some guy with a bunch of girls, or some girl who's, looking good. It's just like, conditioning. They're very good at it. And they brainwash you to think, if you do this, you'll have this life. But then people, like you said, they see a small entrepreneur selling something, they say, too expensive. Then they go out the weekend and spend double that money on something that's not life affirmative. So
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to, the collective consciousness shift of changing our mindset, recognizing step one is awareness, recognize that we are being, programmed, we are being conditioned, and that's okay if we're aware of it. If we're not aware of it, some things probably not going to go in our way, but I think it just comes down to awareness, and then, leading the change, being the change is, the most important thing. And, obviously the work that you're doing is leading the change. And I can only imagine how many people's lives you change with the material you put out there. So just want to thank you for the work you're doing, my friend.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. So I guess the answer is like buy less beer and spend that money on microgreen seeds
Right,
and some
exactly.
soil.
There we go. Good soil and good seeds. And then, then we're good to go.
Yeah.
Love it, dude. So where can people follow along with what you're doing? Be up to date with all the latest stuff. Obviously, you got the software coming up, you got the move going on, you got a lot of good transitions happening in your life. Where can people follow along and be plugged in?
Yeah. So I mean, social media is where it's at. My YouTube channel is probably currently my best value that I have on the internet. So definitely start there if you really want to start diving into the microgreen stuff. Instagram, it's the same handle across all the platforms at Donny, Donny Greens, plural with an S at the end. So yeah, just follow me on there, follow along, and that's that. Look forward to meeting you guys.
Awesome. Don, thanks for being here, brother. Everybody listening, if you didn't catch those links, I'm going to put all the links to his social media in the description box here, so you can like, subscribe, follow along. But brother Don, thanks for being here, my friend. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you.
Everybody listening, have the best day ever. Peace. So thanks again for listening to this episode with Donny Greens. Like I mentioned, I'll put all those links in the description box as well. And also want to invite you to download my free ebook. It's called Yes, You Can Grow Your Own Food. So if you're looking to learn the basics of food, talking about soil, light, water, air quality, just the fundamentals, the basics. I know a lot of people will hear this podcast, hear content that I create, hear content that Donny makes, and say, oh, well, that's cool, you can do that, but I can't. So I put together a very simple guide. I think it's 13 pages, just the 1, 2, 3s of getting your own food production going. Whether you want to just grow some herbs in your house, you want to grow a couple microgreens, or you want to get a real garden going or a homestead. It's just a foundational piece, and I'd love for you to check that out. I'd love to get your feedback, and I'd love to see the picture of the food you're growing. So once again, thank you for your support. If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share, because that's how we get to spread this message, and you get to support myself and Donny and make this world a little bit of a healthier, happier, greener place.